Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the show. And it's your fault. It's your fault you find yourself in the position you are right now. It's your fault you find your family in the position that you are right now. It's your fault that you find your community and your country in the position. Why? Because you are silent for too long. You took no action. You let them walk all over you. Would it be your spouse, your partner, your family member, your employee, your coworker, your public representative, your governor, your prime minister, whoever it is? You didn't say a word because you were too busy with your Instagram, TikToks, or maybe you were too busy to paying bills and having a job, or two, or three, because carbon tax ain't cheap. It's about 40% of the cost here in Quebec of your gas at the pump. And now you can't even afford fast food. Not that you should afford fast food, but it's your fault. Glenn, I must tell you, that's your fault as well, because you were too quiet, too silent for too long.
Big fella, I would have to agree. I'm going to have to get better at getting the message out there so that people will adhere to the belief of self-accountability. We're the only living species that has a free will, but people are not using it. They're going through life taking the easy way, called willful ignorance. They can't be bothered to know the truth. They just allow things to happen around them. And when something bad happens to them, they always blame somebody else instead of taking responsibility. This is why everybody's all divided up. We're not together. Divided, we're weak. But if we united together, then the so-called elites, the people who apparently that we vote for, that are supposed to do what's best for us as Canadians, and the same thing that goes with any other country, they're doing a horrible job. They're getting paid exponentially for it, and they're appeasing the globalists, not the people that they're paid to help and to govern. Govern yourself accordingly. You notice it says yourself. First start with yourself, make yourself the best you can be, and then you're going to be able to hold others accountable for that too. So I will get better at getting the message out to everybody.
Susan, are you going to get better at getting the message out there as well?
Oh, I'm really loud, but more so about relationships. But I think in the end of the day, I'm really, by the way, happy to be sitting here talking to you guys about this particular thing. And it's not about loving relationships. It's about loving the world we live in. And we do have to take part in speaking up in what is fair and what's not. I'm not a rightist. I'm not a leftist either. I play in the gray, which means doesn't mean I'm impartial. I have my opinions, but I also am not against governance. I love government. We all need a structure, thank goodness, because we have too many people in society, my peers, who don't even think straight. So I don't let emotional people run the country or the world. Thank you very much. Emotional people, stay home and do your studying.
So you won't be voting for Trudeau.
So no, she keeps her political, views.
She's a political atheist. You're not a left wing or a right wing. You're more of a no wing. In other words, a libertarian.
Yeah, because I see shit everywhere. Okay, I see shit in the right. I see shit in the left. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I want fairness. I want this corruption that's going on, and this it's just bullshit. So yeah. That's where I stand, is fairness.
Speaking about corruption, I know the big fella just waiting to put this out there for everybody. Watch this.
Our brothers and sisters, this is not a new video. You've seen this before. This is not a new subject. There's a reason why I brought it up. There is a show about our economy here in Canada specifically, and holding politicians accountable. So it's a good example of where the state of political things are. And we'll start with the video. We'll comment on that, and then we'll talk about carbon tax and the failure of it. Right now in Canada, a lot of provinces are now rebelling against it, and the worst place probably for carbon tax is here in Quebec. But there's a difference between carbon tax in Atlantic Canada versus Western Canada, and now it creates conflict internal where actually Liberals are backpedaling from the the carbon tax 2030 agenda initiatives. So let's watch the video without further ado, because I talk way too long. Go ahead.
Is fairly simple for the public to understand. You've got two people who run a company with 0 other employees. They get hired by the government. They do no IT work. They subcontract the work, and they get a big cut for themselves, over $11 million on ArriveCan alone. The government chose, for some reason, to hire these two middlemen who did no IT work to then hire someone else, and they got over $11 million in the process.
Is it corruption or cronyism or both? Or just simple delinquency versus incompetence?
Cronyism is corruption. You're not getting paid for what you do. You're getting paid for who you know. Therein lies the problem. We're talking about the ArriveCan app, an app that never worked properly at all, and supposedly cost Canadians $54 million for this intrusive app that never worked properly. You had two birds there, got paid $11 million, and did absolutely nothing. There must have been a kickback involved there. And so that's what
must have been. That's not a question anymore.
Well, I'm just protecting myself legally.
Okay.
You know, the lawyer's tugging at my arm. Easy, big guy. Easy, big guy.
So yeah, well, you're absolutely right. Let's continue watching this thing.
And so it's frustrating to hear, you're talking a lot about processes and procedures and how do we tighten the screws on all the processes. But doesn't that miss the core point that this one obviously really stinks? And why didn't government officials, why did they think it was a good idea to give over $11 million to these two guys who did?
Because they knew those two guys will transfer the money to the offshore accounts. That's why. And they could trust them because they'll keep it quiet.
Did no IT work in exchange for their subcontracting services. So to really get at the nub of the issue, Ms. Gorman, why do you think they were hired?
I wasn't in the agency when they were hired. My understanding is that they had a standing offer that had been competed and established through public services and procurement.
I don't believe that.
There were a lot of people in IT who make programs, and they said they could have made a better app
for $300.
No, not 300, but like in 1 week it would have cost the taxpayer $5,000 for a good working app.
Yeah, what the lady's saying is, my name is Binet and I'm not in it.
And whether I'm using the proper term, a standing offer or a supply arrangement for staff enhancements that the CBSA and other departments would use.
Okay, let me jump in now. So these guys had a great thing going then. Clearly, like if Stephanie and I said, "Hey, we got an idea. We're gonna open a firm in our garage, and we're gonna get hired by the government to do work, which we're then going to get passed on to someone else, and we're going to take 15 or 30% of it." What stops any two Canadians from doing that?
True. Like we could do that here in the studio.
Yeah.
I'm seized with the contracting function in CBSA, and I have outlined how I'm addressing it. The questions that you raised.
Let's take a step back and understand how this
other
can happen.
departments who might be better
Our
placed to
integrity
respond
is too
to
high.
that.
Okay, but clearly these two guys weren't just any two people. Clearly they had access to someone or something that allowed them to get paid by.
No, they just got lucky. It's like a lottery ticket, $11 million for the services.
The government to do nothing. Is that not a reasonable inference?
You slipping in more notes.
Mr. Doan, do you have a comment on this?
Those are allegations that have only come to light, to my knowledge, recently.
But it just doesn't make sense, right? Would you?
So basically what he's saying, I have no clue what you're talking about. I had no idea. This is the people that you put in charge of the taxpayer funds. This is the people you put in charge of making decisions on behalf of the representatives. This is the people that's supposed to know this stuff. This is the people that are getting paid a lot of money. They get good pensions. They get good incentives. And they only work, 6 months a year? And the rest of the time they're on vacation?
Like
If
you said,
lucky.
they have no idea. Yeah, they have no idea how they got caught, you mean?
Agree that it just doesn't make sense?
What doesn't make sense? My apologies.
Well, the fact that two people were paid over $11 million to do no work and subcontract.
The CBSA worked very closely with PSPC and all the rules governed by PSPC on all of these engagements.
Yeah, but this is sort of process mumbo jumbo. Like I think people would want to know. They got paid to do nothing. Why were they hired?
I believe.
Who made the decision? Let me just ask that. Who made the decision?
I believe, as my colleague at CBSA has said, that this is currently under investigation.
So you don't know who made the decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay, so none of you know who made the decision to hire these two guys, according to your testimony.
I can say, based on memory, that my team made the decision.
Well, who?
Who made the final decision? Who sent it?
At this time, it's my knowledge. I do not know, and it's part of the investigation that's currently underway.
Glenn, you ask me any questions like this in the official capacity. That's the answer I'm giving. I do not recall, Your Honor. That's a legal way to answer. Brothers and sisters, if you don't want to compromise yourself and you can't plead the Fifth like you can in United States, here, which is the Fifth Amendment, you're entitled not in criminalizing yourself. You could just stay silent. Same thing you can do here in Canada. Just say, Your Honor, I really don't recall. It was tough times. You know, I had a cold back then, and I really don't remember. And that's a proper defense. The reason why I'm bringing this up, brothers and sisters, right now at this moment, this is nothing new. This has been going on. I still don't know if they resolved this. To your knowledge, guys, do you know if that's been resolved? I don't think so. I still don't know, and I don't know if there's anybody.
It's going to, but like he said, to his knowledge. Be wary of that word knowledge. I always say, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? You become wise when you realize most knowledge is not true. So they hide a lot of the truth. And I didn't know. Right now, I don't know. It's not my knowledge of knowing. Yeah, it's supposed to be. That's your job. That's what you get paid for. That's why you're a government official. That is your whole job. So you're basically telling everybody you're horrible at your job. Bye. Well, you know, if I have a company and there was a person who's supposed to do some work and they were horrible and negligent about it, I would say, well, you got to go because I got to find somebody who wants to do the job. That's what the job description is.
You know, there's no perfect system out there.
Nope.
And as long as there are human beings, it's never going to be perfect. But there needs to be governance. There needs to be some sort of measure in place to really hold these people accountable, like you said, Glenn, you know, because it's ridiculous. And one thing I'm grateful for, though, although what happened was wrong there, because two people should never be paid, so their procurement is messed, and there is some cronyism or corruption there. But here's the thing. I'm really grateful that this guy exists to question these people, and we need that system. So we do have a balanced system in place right now where people are getting questioned now. And the more we talk about this, the more people are going to be aware that maybe we need to put more measures in place like this guy to question things.
That's what society is supposed to do. We're supposed to hold them accountable. We're supposed to realize that we have the power collectively as the Canadian people. In other words, this person, this government official is telling you they work for us, but we're not holding them accountable. You work horribly. Goodbye. That's it. Next. And this, you know, that was a $54 million ArriveCan app. Okay. That's $54 million on the big scale of things to Canada. That's a little bit minor, but that's just another example of the troubles that we're facing here. You know, last month, there's 2 million people, Canadians, every month who use food banks right now.
Yeah, that's an enormous number. Enormous number for Canadian population, right? We couldn't use that 11 million to feed people?
People can't, or 54 million. These guys got paid 11 million. The rest was for something that didn't work. Again, you know, Canadians have sent $9.5 billion over to Ukraine.
How's that money being used? Okay, so the reason that I'm glad you brought this up. The reason why I brought this up is not because, okay, you haven't heard the story or you don't understand about the system of cronyism and checks and balances and all that stuff. No, the reason I brought it up, if we cannot account and call people responsible, okay, I don't know who made the decision. That's my department. I'm the head of it. I don't know who made the decision. If you don't remember, or you're not being held accountable, like my thing is like, well, how is it going to be held accountable? Is he has to pay this 11 million back to the taxpayer? If we determine that's the person who made a decision, are we going to ask for the money back? The people who stole the money, are they going to be held responsible for this? Probably not. My guess is the point is $9.5 billion is a lot more than 54. And that's our money. This is a Canadians' money, taxpayer money. You tell me, you can account for every dollar that we send there is going to go for a particular purpose, humanitarian reasons, military action. It's not going into the, what's his name's wife, Zelensky's wife, going shopping at Cartier for $1 million in New York, right? You telling me we can account for every dollar? I'm not even talking about every trillion. Again, you can account for every million. Let's do that. Let's do $1 billion. Can you account $1 billion? Do you know exactly where $1 billion went? Let alone 9.5
thousand millions, $1 billion.
Right?
Really?
Right.
Right now, we're looking at record amount of homeless people in Canada. Every city. You see that a lot of homeless people, they fell through the cracks. Socialism was to minimize the cracks, yet socialism is cracking itself. So there's more people falling through the cracks. The Canadian dollar is not money. It's a fiat currency. It's a floating currency. The taxpayers, they're paying through their many different types of tax sources, whether it be income tax, property tax, water tax, tax on this, gas tax, carbon tax, taxing the air that you breathe. We said it. I said it 10 years ago. They're going to find a way to tax the air that you breathe, the food that you eat. Everything is all tax. Okay? And they still, with all this tax, they still can't balance the budget. Cities, provinces, and the federal government, all of them are in the most debt they've ever been in. The average Canadian is in the furthest debt they've ever been in, the most credit card debt. They're starting to repossess cars here left and right. In America, it's in 29 years, they have the highest amount of car repossession rates. And this is right now. What's it going to be like when more businesses start closing, the unemployment starts going up, Canada is sitting in the biggest residential housing bubble in the world, and the financing for this bubble has just got more expensive because they're raising the interest rates, because they're trying to slow down the inflation that was created by all the money printing to go along to create the debt in the first place. This is a debt-based monetary system, and the system can only keep going if every year they have more and more debt is created.
Oh, it's not just, okay, so there's another tax that I want to mention. This is not something new, but Danielle Smith, that's the Alberta.
From Alberta.
Alberta, right? She just posted this on X. Just when we all had enough of the carbon tax, you mentioned the housing crisis, and some people say it's not a housing crisis, it's an immigration crisis. By some people, I think like Maxime Bernier and people who think like him.
Combo.
But Ottawa has decided to introduce a new tax on homes. So that we have a housing crisis, but the new home builds would cost at least $35,000 more for families in Alberta, or $71,000 more in Ontario due to new green requirements, which is Agenda 2030. We need all Canadians, especially young Canadians, to start speaking up for an affordable future where home ownership is available to more people, not less. And that's how we started the show. You need not to be silent, and you need to speak up. Now, the reason why we even bring this up, because we also have this racket called a carbon tax. That's why you brought it up. They didn't. And by the way, Trudeau is not the first one in the Western world to pedal back. It was Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is the British Prime Minister, and he looked at some poll numbers and said, "No, we got to scrap this. If I have a chance to get reelected in the next term, we got to do it." And Canada, the world's fourth largest oil producer, is aiming to cut emissions by 45%, I guess not net zero, below 2005 levels by 2030. You know that number 2030, that magical 2030 number, it kind of appears everywhere in the world. It has nothing to do with World Economic Forum or the Agenda 2030, which is now actually, they know they're behind, so they kind of made it Agenda 2050. Steadily a rising carbon price that will hit 170 Canadian dollars a ton by 2030 from $65 a ton currently is a key part of their plan. So if you live in Quebec, you're paying what, 40% in tax just on per liter on gas. So you're paying like 50 cents additional just in carbon tax, or is it all taxes combined?
It's all taxes.
It's all taxes. All taxes combined.
This is the most socialist of all the provinces. Speaking about socialism, a quick little break. You're watching the students protesting because they want to raise the price of tuition at the university. By the way, Quebec tuition rates are the lowest in the country on average. So, you've already got it the best, and you're not happy when they have to raise it up. It's called inflation. It has to go up. It's just inflation. It was created by Justin Trudeau. Okay? And when you're watching these students protesting, okay, you're not happy with that. It's going a little bit more expensive, but it's already the best in Canada. But you see them protesting and they're wearing a Canada Goose jacket, and you're saying, the reason why it's so cheap is because people like us pay the taxes and the high taxes to make it less expensive for you to go to school here. Not only that, the equalization payments, in other words, the province of Alberta, the least socialist of all the provinces, the most capitalist of all the provinces, they make the most amount of money, so they give to the federal government the biggest chunk by far, and the federal government gives it to the socialist province of Quebec. So, if I lived in Alberta, I would be up in arms saying, hey, why don't we finance our own universities? Why do we got to give to the federal who gives to the province of Quebec? And they're not even happy anyways.
Same thing with the pension plan, right? They don't want to pay into a federal pension plan anymore. They want to create their own.
I'm sure they would be able to get a better rate of return. It would be a lot less of a Ponzi scheme.
Well, it's not just Alberta; it's also Saskatchewan. So Scott Moe, right?
Scotty Moe.
Scotty Moe. So we have him. This is the statement he made just a few days ago.
Prime Minister Trudeau announced a 3-year exemption on the carbon tax for home heating oil. This exemption is primarily for families in Atlantic Canada where heating oil is used in 40% of their homes. In making this announcement, the Prime Minister has effectively destroyed 2 of the myths that he has created about the carbon tax. First is that the carbon tax is affordable, because most Canadians receive more back in rebates than they pay in carbon tax. If that were true, why would he need to remove it as an affordability measure on home heating oil for families in Atlantic Canada? And the second myth is this, that it's a tax that's being applied fairly in all parts of the country based on a set rate per ton of greenhouse gas emissions. Home heating oil is used primarily in one part of the country, and it has higher greenhouse gas emissions than other heat sources, like natural gas, that is used in most Saskatchewan homes. So the Prime Minister chose to make life more affordable for families in one part of the country while leaving Saskatchewan families out in the cold. How is that fair to families here in our province? We're affordable.
Glenn, that's what you were saying. Take money out of one province and distribute it. That's how it's been done. That's the business as usual for the Liberals for a long time.
Transfer
a redistribution. A redistributionist. That's all he is. Take from the haves, keep giving to the have-nots. But there's a reason why they're have-nots. Okay? They make wrong decisions.
But that's how they did it during the communism. So how are we different now? Is Canada communist straight up right now because of this? I don't know.
Well, extreme socialism is communism. It starts to get closer to communism, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, especially the way the family.
But it's nice to see that certain people, leaders of provinces, are standing up and say enough.
Are they standing up because it's the conviction, or they're standing up because the poll numbers? That's like you don't
Well,
have that
Trudeau
answer.
is giving in because of the poll numbers. The federal government, the Liberals, if there was an election held today, apparently it would not even be close. The Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre would win by the biggest majority, the third largest majority ever. So I don't know. I think Trudeau is history. He did everything he can by the World Economic Forum to ruin the country. There are a few little good things he did, very little. But right now, we're going to see the ramifications of all these bad decisions that he's made, and the people are going to go through it. They're going to be going through the roughest economic times that they've ever saw. Most of us have ever been here, unless you're extremely old and you went through World War II. But other than that, and this is going to be the greatest smash ever, is you're going to have the people with the weakest resolve, the softest, they're the easiest to fall, going into the hardest economy ever. Before we were talking about the housing crisis in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
The CMHC, which is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corp, the leader of it, she just stepped down. Okay, she's going to an IMF, International Monetary Fund job. So she did her job of creating the housing bubble. And now she's going to leave before we really hear a huge popping sound.
And Valerie Plante, your favorite, the mayor of Montreal, she got a UN job too. She put in all those bike paths. She created a couple of 15-minute cities here in Montreal. And as a payback, she's got her, that would be her retirement cushy thingy.
Montreal is in a real serious economic problem. They're so far over budget. I mean, the people who are responsible for running the budget, they can't even budget their own households properly. That's why they vote themselves in huge salary increases. Like at the provincial level, they voted themselves a 30% increase. When they want to give jobs like nurses, a 7% increase.
Oh, they also start to attack each other. Like, that's how you know there's a crisis in the government, because Singh, right, the fearless leader of NDP, what's his first name? Jagmeet, right? So Jagmeet Singh, he attacked Trudeau. He said, I can't believe he has such crazy, but he didn't attack him for the carbon tax policies. He's like, well, this is a solution to carbon, to the new housing and all that stuff. Let's remove the GST. Right, so he cannot go against the carbon tax because he's also a member of World Economic Forum, and that's the part of the Agenda 2030, and that's why he's providing a solution. Let's remove GST for all those poor people, right? So I don't know if that's a solution, if that's enough to offset or anything like this, and I don't know if there's anything economically to offset unless you remove all the government restrictions, specifically in the oil industry, right? Because the oil industry, I think, is enough to provide economic growth and a boost for Canada alone.
Of course. I mean, we're the fourth largest provider in the world.
Yeah.
Number one, believe it or not, everybody thinks it's Saudi Arabia. No, it is not. The United States of America is the number one oil producer in the world. Number two is Saudi Arabia. Number three is Russia. Number four is Canada. I mean, do you think that if Canada governed itself more accordingly and was knew a little bit better on how to finance and balance the books, that this country would be doing so much better?
But now you sound logical, and there's nothing to do with logic, because
Thank you.
If you are going,
It's political.
It is political, and the purpose of this policy is to actually destroy the Western country like Canada, to destroy the Western world. That's why, to minimize it, because the whole concept of the carbon tax is ridiculous, because carbon is the food for what? Plants. And here in Canada, we have woods, we have forests.
Boreal forest, the largest forest in the world, by the way,
Mm.
and the most amount of fresh water in the world.
Our forest alone offsets all of our carbon efforts alone.
Many times over.
Many times over.
Oh, our natural resources.
Same thing goes for U.S. Same thing goes for U.S. So carbon tax has nothing to do with the environment. I agree that we need to protect our environment from pollution. And the biggest pollution right now that we know in the world is anything to do with lithium mines that they are digging up for electric cars. And now we're building all those battery factories in Ontario. We're so proud of them that we are so woke and
biggest pollution in the world right now, I think, is all the crap coming out of the politicians' mouths.
Yeah, they don't brush their teeth, or they brush their teeth with garbage. I don't know. Susan, I mean, you've been pretty quiet. I know it's sort of out of your
She's letting
cup
the
of
men
tea,
vent.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Geez,
Is this something like I know you stand on this, but we know for a fact the politicians right now don't represent interests of the people, and they're not being held accountable. How would you address it from the woman's perspective? How would you hold politicians
Good question,
accountable?
I don't know if I don't even know if my perspective is woman or man. But anyways, I do know one thing. I don't like politicians that are pansies. Okay, we need to have a backbone. And I do know that the system in North America, even the US, the politician doesn't have all power. I get that. You know, there has to be some accountability, but geez, like no backbone. Come on. Like, and then run by what people think. This is very similar to social media and likes. Getting likes is more important than doing the right thing or doing the fair thing, right? And same thing with politics now. It's become this fashion show where you're a runway model, and it's gotten really ridiculous. I know I'm not against. I mean, Canada has the best natural resources, and like you said, the oil industry, it's like the water. I mean, we have our hydro. Why can't we just really refine those resources in a way that we can start capitalizing from them? But then we have the green people saying, well, don't do this and don't do that, and the pipelines, and oh my goodness, like seriously. So how can we capitalize on our resources in the right way
to make the average life, the average Canadian's life, so much more exponentially higher than what it is right now? Why? Because it's set up this way for so few to make all the money and the many to still struggle. That's what I mean that's a good form of redistribution, because that's not capitalism, that's crapitalism caused by cronyism, which we talked about on a previous show. It's not what you know or what you do, it's who you know, and as little as you do, and you get paid exponentially for it. And when we run out, we can just tap the taxpayer. And when the taxpayer, we can't even balance the books from the taxpayer, we'll go to the central bank and have them print more money and buy our bonds so we can flood the market with this fiat currency and create another tax on the middle class called inflation. This is what's going on, and this can only happen in a society where men have been weakened. They're distracted, they're just focusing on their sports, their social media, and they sit home and watch TV and drink their beer, you know, and they get programmed. That's why they call it a TV program. They get programmed, and now the common thing when you try to wake up people is, yeah, but it's just me. What can I do? Well, why do you want to limit yourself for? Get out there. What do you mean it's just you? It's just, everybody is just an individual, but collectively we create the change. And this is what's coming. The change will come. It's just going to be a little bit tough in the meantime.
Well, politics is true, because we do have to rise up in our voices. How we speak and how we express what we feel is one thing. But the other thing is, in politics, nobody even wants to be in politics anymore. It's such a crappy job. So we have to choose the best of all the shit, like really now. So I don't even know what to do half the time, right? Even the policies and everything, it's like, it's just all a mess. So I think we have to really think about having better people come to the table in helping our country run its policies. But
I agree with both of you. It's not, okay, what can I do? I'm just myself. Yeah. Well, it's you just yourself. Glenn is just himself. Susan is just herself. All of us are together. But if we hold on, if we stick to our principle to our values, and your neighbor sticks to his principles and his values, and hopefully that we have the shared common value, which we do. We want security for our families, for ourselves. We want, safety. We want financial prosperity. We want all those services. Like, we don't have health, like, oh, Canada has free health. No, you don't. When was your last time you trying to go to hospital and see a specialist for something? Can you see one before you die? God forbid. And I'm not making fun of the people that are waiting in line right now to see a specialist. I pray for you that you'll see somebody and you find the solution. But a fearless leader, I know this is, we started the conversation, what can I do? But it's hard to maintain your peace when, the powers to be trying really hard to destroy the country. Right now, what else I read on the news, and we'll go close with that, India visa processor in Canada says to stop all the services. So let me get this straight. India is the biggest economy right now, right, in the world. That's the fastest growing economy.
Fastest growing economy.
Fastest growing
perhaps,
economy. Not biggest, but
as China is collapsing.
As China is collapsing, right? So that's the one that to watch out for, and that's what the Israel wants to build a new Silk Road with, right? And now Canada has the worst relationship with India in ages.
Thanks, Trudeau.
Yeah, thank you, Trudeau. And again, aligning himself with the wrong people, and that's the thing. This guy needs to be removed from the office ASAP. The way Sophie removed him from the family. I want to finish on a good note. For many, I'm not for the distraction of family. I'm not for the divorce. I'm here for the finding conflict, solution to conflict, especially when it comes to a family. 100%. Family is the most important unit in society. However, we've been saying it for a long time, and it's been public even before COVID, that Sophie and Trudeau were in separation for quite a few years. But the reason why, I even bringing this story up the way I brought up the first story of Arrive Can, is because for the most part, it's all a theater. They're just taking the money, they're printing the money, they put it in their pockets, they, exercising cronyism, they're sharing it with the, kickback partners, etc. And now we learned that Sophie actually been in a relationship with somebody for a long time, and it was all a facade, maintaining oh, look at him, he's a family man, he still has his wife and kids and all that stuff. And it's all fake, brothers and sisters. So don't buy anything you see on TV, you hear it, because companies like CBC gets billions of dollars, CTVs and Global News, even if they don't get directly kickback from the government in terms of federal government grant, the federal government buys advertising space for things like COVID and flu vaccines, which cost a lot of money, and nobody's going to shoot themselves in the foot. And they're going to propagate and maintain the support for the Liberal Party. Yeah, Glenn, what you got to say? I know you got to say.
Bro, you started talking about the spikes vaccines here in Canada. They really gave it to us. They made it very difficult to exist normally, and we're paying the price for that now. But I'll go on record on saying I believe in the upcoming years, they're going to have a vaccine for all the vaccines that people took.
And that's just Glenn's opinion, and we're an entertainment channel, and we don't want to cancel this show because it's been a really, really good one, brothers and sisters. And thank you again for tuning in to Alex Sass Show. Thank you. Did I say Alex Sass Show? No, it's Alex Sass Show.
Same thing.
Is it? Okay, that is same thing.
I'm not
you
offended.
So, Susan, thank you for your input. Glenn, once again, you are the man. You are the champion of the people. And brothers and sisters, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Glenn, we make a community worse for everyone.